Theo is going to give an introduction on inclusive education. But remember, over the last 2 years, there's been a huge shift towards digital learning, remotely and in the classroom. And the experiences of the pandemic led to some innovative technology solutions for including persons with disabilities in African classrooms.
Dear comrades, I'm Theo Ressa. I'm a black male African, Kenyan, US-based teacher. I teach special education. I use the wheelchair, and what else? I have bald hair right now, and what else? I have brown glasses, and what else? I'm wearing a gray striped suit, a blue shirt, and a tie, which is very much multicolored. I guess that's all for now on my part of introduction. So, well, we are leading the inclusive education panel, and with us is Richard Mativu. We have Tobiloba Ajayi, and then we have Victo Nalule, and then finally we have Dominique. I don't want to mutilate your last name. The only word in French I know is comment allez-vous, so probably you will have to pronounce your last name. Okay, so our panel generally focuses on inclusive education. I'm a professor of special education, inclusive education, but generally I go by a professor of equity and disability and equity studies in education. So that's my area of focus. So I teach in special ed, inclusive ed, and equity-related courses in the United States for teacher preparation programs. So inclusive ed is an interesting area for us by the virtue that we have gained the momentum to argue that, well, people with disabilities need to be part and parcel of the community. So as a unit, we have argued over the years that the best way to empower people with disabilities is to make them be in the community. However, from our presentation so far, everything is so clear that we still have teething problems with inclusive education. And some of us, like myself here, and I guess the panel will also be sharing, we are some of, in quotes, the elitist, people with disabilities. We are beneficiaries. Majority of people with disabilities in Kenya, actually, almost 70% don't access education. So as much as we are proud inclusive education, the grandmother of all questions, I guess feminists will challenge me on that, let me add the grandfather of all questions, is how do we create an environment that allows those who oftentimes are left behind to participate in education? We know very well that with education, virtually everyone can contribute to the production of resources, can contribute to the development of the nation, and can also contribute to the welfare of the global community. So in Kenya, as I've mentioned, 70% of children with disabilities don't access education. And I wish the National Council of Persons with Disabilities chair was here, and I wish other government representatives were here, because I believe in practicalities for a number of reasons. One is because in Kenya, when MPs talk about salaries, they always compare themselves with leaders in the United States. But when it comes to empowerment of the local people, they always say, well, Kenya is a developing country, we don't have the resources. Now, that kind of contradictory message is what we inclusive education educators want to engage in dialogue with. So I want to go deeper for the sake of time. I want to take this opportunity to invite the panelists, and probably in this order that they are seated, I want them to introduce themselves, and then probably take an opportunity to share your stories, what you are doing to promote inclusive education, or whatever you are doing.
Thank you so much. My name is Victo Nalule. I'm a designer. For those who can't see me, I'm putting on red shoes. I have black hair. I'm a chocolate, I believe so. I'm not black, as people call us, like we are black from Africa. I'm a chocolate, and I like making nails, so my nails are blue. So I think those are some of the standing on myself right now as I'm talking to you. Back in the loam, about inclusiveness. During the break, we are talking with my colleagues, some of the people from the Google, and talking about what does it mean? It means like to be into an inclusive education, in Africa. And I just want to use this opportunity, basically to share about my experience as a person living with disability. I didn't talk about, I use a wheelchair, but though now I exit my wheelchair for now, but I'm a wheelchair user. And I'm a polio victim at the same time, and I got this when I was only 2 years, so I just lived this all my life. So when people see me driving fast in my Tesla, they say, oh my God, how do you do that? Just experience. So I went into a special needs school, and it was amazing. I don't want to lie to you. It was amazing because we didn't have a space whereby, this person had a disability, or the other person can do ABC, so we have to help this person. And after that kind of exciting, normal life with normal other people with disability, the student with disability, I went into a trauma whereby I had to go into a secondary school, whereby in Uganda, we didn't have a special school for high school, so I had to go to a normal school. And my guardian, it was kind of hard for them to say, like, let's take this person to this particular kind of a school. And so, it was kind of, to me, I felt like I was abandoned because I was in a space where there were no accessibility in terms of ramps, in terms of the toilet, everything was at 0 point. But then, to me, it was a blessing in disguise because I think that built my self-esteem. I got to know that I won't live in a life of the special needs, life cutting. I'm going to live in a life where, everyone, just like where we are right now, we're talking about inclusiveness, we're talking about accessibility and technology. And for me, that I think brought in a life of I need to basically adopt to the new life and get to the next stage. And through what I'm doing right now, I have an organization called Tunaweza Foundation. And we do a lot into inclusiveness. We try to help the people with disability to discover their potential and use that potential basically to live a normal life. And we are in the movement of we can, the Tunaweza means it's a Swahili word, which means yes, we can. And we are in this space of we want to see students living with disability access all the opportunities they need in space. And in one of the programs we do, basically, we sponsor students with disability. And those students with disability, what we do, we use a lot of design thinking. And the design thinking is all about, this person has to go through the same kind of systems of the schooling. We get to know what type of a disability and what can this person do with that kind of a disability. We've got students, for example, I have Aaron, they've just finished their graphic designing, and for me that is a success. They couldn't go to secondary, it's now 3 years they've been into graphic designing, and they are done, and they can do something. So when we come here and we talk about the inclusive technology, and I like what Irene is bringing on board here, it's amazing that this is where we need to know it's not all about just the education part of it, but what abilities and disabilities, because we've got different types of disabilities. We may talk about the blind, the deaf, the physically challenged, but then we have the multiple. How do we bring all that together on the same table and say, okay, what can these people do, the autism, how do you bring all these kind of different kind of disability on table, and we try to drive the points at home. Thank you.
I think it's on.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Richard Mativu, working with Sense International as a country director. Well, I'm black, in a black suit, black shoes, black hair, and my glasses have a black frame. I'm wearing a gray shirt. The tie, I don't know how to describe it, but it has some boxes, I think, checked. It is checked, but big lines. Then I have some tag for Kenya on the left part of my coat's collar. Well, that's me. I'm deaf and I'm using a sign language interpreter who is seated right before me. And of course, I can speak. That's how you can hear me, right? Okay, that said, I'll be speaking about inclusive education and something on technology. And I'll talk mostly about the area that we work, that is persons with complex disabilities, because my colleagues will share more about other areas, but I want to be very biased to deaf blindness and other multisensory impairments. I'll start with a brief story about me. Well, when I became deaf, that was the first 3 months after I enrolled into university. That very minute, the institution didn't know how to help me. So, because I was taking a course in economics, when the Senate met and talked about me, they thought it's better this person who cannot hear now, because when this person joined the institution, he was hearing. Now he can't hear, so what do we do with him? We think it's better he moved to the School of Education. Then he can teach people who cannot hear. I think that's what Haben was talking about in the morning, ableism, where they feel because you can't hear, you are better placed just to deal with people like you who do not need to hear you speak, they just need to see you sign. And for me at that very moment, I think at that stage I was still a fighter. I didn't go with their proposal. I remained in my campus, did my course, and I can say that's when I started learning that digital platforms really come in handy, because my sign language was still very basic. I was still learning, and the library books, the computer lab, those are places where I could really catch up with other students, because I could just, like Google, you can just ask a question, you get different answers, and you can really read a lot. You see, that's how I benefited. So now, to come back here, when you think about deaf blindness and other complex disabilities, our organization has had a number of programs. And I'll say one innovative approach that we've thought about when it comes to complex disabilities is we've always talked about teacher support assistance, communication assistance, but we have a model that we call learner support assistant. This is a person who is directly supporting the learner. And this person is not supporting the teacher, it's directly to the learner, because such disabilities demand one-on-one support for you to access education like any other person. So we have a curriculum which we've developed with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. We enrolled over 100 LSAs, and I can say we've graduated over 70% of that number. And now anybody who wants to learn about being learner support assistant, you can enroll and learn under Kenya Institute of Special Needs Education. Now, how that model works, the learner supports the student. The LSA, let's call LSA, learner support assistant, will be supporting the students who have a complex disability in classroom. And that will also mean that depending on the degree or severity of your disability, you will of course need some assistive devices, which we work closely with the right departments in the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, some education support officers, just to assess learners, identify their needs, and identify the right assistive technology they can use. I'm proud to say our organization has supported a number of students get Orbit readers through partnership with KBTA. Orbit readers is a gadget that will help you. It's like a book reader, it has a braille component. These things, if you Google, you read more about them. So we've given learners that one is better than having the braille embosser, which is bigger, heavier, and all that. So another thing when it comes to inclusive education is the place of parents. How we engage parents, how we ensure parents have the right skill to support their children, because inclusive education, when you just think about the school setup and the hardware, you need to think about the software and where the child is coming from. Is the parent equipped with skills to support the child? At home, you're always supporting your children with homework. Have you ever asked yourself, a parent who has a child with disability, when that child is at home and they need the parent support, what does the parent feel when you are not able to just help your child? No, 5 minus 2 is 3. but you do not have the language. You do not know how this child is learning. If the child has autism, the child has dyslexia, they might have language problems, but you do not know where to start. You just think the teacher is everything. So these are gaps that Sense International tries to fill. And these are things that we need to be thinking about as people who are working in the technology sector. Which devices can we have? There is another device that Sense International is trying to bring to the country. We've already identified a Canadian manufacturer. This is a machine that converts speech to Braille and Braille to speech. I can't say it's almost what she was using, but this is simpler. It uses a smartphone and cheaper, way much cheaper, but still expensive for Kenyans. So these are gadgets that we want to think about. Something extra, because I know I only have 4 minutes, or 2 minutes. 2 minutes, I think I need less. So the gadget is called tactile, it's called Haptic Braille, which has 6 buttons. It's a gadget that we are thinking of bringing, and soon we'll be able to provide this. There is also a tactile tablet, which has software that translates and prepares graphic illustrations into tactile outline images. These gadgets, we were able to see them 2 weeks ago during the first African Conference for Deaf-Blindness, which happened in Nairobi. So different players around the globe came together. We were able to see what people are doing and what we can learn and share from each other. There is a lot to talk, but I don't want to take time for other panelists. Thank you.
I do appreciate it very much. Yes, next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Tobiloba Ajayi from Nigeria. Brief description of myself. I'm wearing a black dress, yellow shoes, and my hair is pulled back to show my face. I run an organization in Nigeria called the Cerebral Palsy Kids Learn Foundation. And our focus is to promote inclusive education for children with cerebral palsy in Nigeria. Brief background, I have cerebral palsy myself, and it was interesting. I was listening to Victo talk about how going from a special school to a mainstream school was like torture. And that's the reason why I always said that it was important that children with disabilities, no matter how complex, start school in an inclusive setting, because the world is not divided into special needs and mainstream. The world is the world. You're going to still have to come back into this world to basically exist and survive. So if you're sheltered into a special school for the first 20 years of your life, and then somebody expects you at 20 to come into the world and then live life, I think that would just be plain wicked. So the work that we do works to support families, very similar to what the last speaker was talking about, making sure that they have the support that families need to be able to help their children access the education that they need. We're training teachers, we're training parents, we're training schools. And like we all know, we're in Africa, a lot of the things that we do is borrowed. He was talking about all of this technology. And I'm hearing we're importing it from Canada, we're importing it from this, and I'm thinking, here we go. Because that's the beginning of inaccessibility for the common man. The truth is that if solutions are going to be created for Africa, they have to be created by Africans. Because we are the ones who understand the landscape and what we need. So it's important, really. I mean, I was thinking about it today. A parent asked me, said, a lot of our children with cerebral palsy cannot speak, so they're dealing with communication challenges. Do you know anybody that's creating technology to address this? And I laughed and I said, oh, interesting. I'm sitting here in the technology conference. I'm going to ask, is anybody creating technology that helps children with cerebral palsy who do not have fine motor skills nor gross motor skills to communicate? And please don't tell me to import it, because the average Nigerian is not going to be able to afford it by the time I look at my Nigerian exchange rate. So it has to be created by Africans for Africa. And it's important that we see, and it goes back to ableism, like Eben was talking about earlier. If we continue to think that children with disabilities do not deserve education, we will not put political will behind it, and neither will we even we will give it mental assent, but we will not put the work that needs to be done behind it to make it a reality. And the truth is, it's not always about money. It's first about willingness. The minute that we're willing to make it happen, we will make it happen. But we have to first believe that it is a worthwhile venture. And so not just pay lip service to it, but begin to think about the ways that we can take what we have and use it to make inclusive education for Africa, not the borrowed version that we're all running on right now, the African version. And it will differ by country. It would differ by district. It would differ by state. We all know this. Teaching and learning does not look the same in every school. It never has. If there are two schools on the same street, teaching and learning is going to look different in those two schools. So why in God's name do we expect inclusion to look the same in every school? It's not going to. Each school has to define what inclusion is for them. And each country has to do the same. The same way we have accessibility guidelines for Kenya, we are going to have inclusive guidelines for Kenya. It has to be what works here. And it has to be localized so that we can then begin to think about local solutions. And because the reason we constantly think about importing solutions is because we even imported the concept. The minute we localize the concept, we create local solutions, and we'll begin to make inclusive education real and not just rhetoric for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please, Dominique.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay. So my name is Dominique Archambault, to answer your first question. So before I present my work, I will say that I'm from top to down, that I have some hair which is getting whiter and whiter. Now it's getting really white. I have some blue frame glasses. I have quite white face. Actually, all my body is white. And I have some kind of blue and white striped shirt, gray trousers, and some very comfortable plastic clogs, reddish, that I forget to change this morning after breakfast, but actually I'm so comfortable in them, so I kept them. So I am professor in computer science at University Paris 8 in Paris, France. So it's a university which is in the very close suburb of Paris in the north. Maybe some of you know a big stadium called le Stade de France. It's just next to it. Much more people know this than my university, I don't know why. And in this university, we have a master called Technology and Disability, which I work for. I've been leading this for a few years. And we teach students how to develop assistive products and digital accessibility. There are many lectures on programming, but also on consequences of disabilities. If some people are interested, I can tell more offline. And in this university, we also have a research team working on these subjects. The reason I'm here is more because since 1988, I am in charge of students with disabilities at different levels in French universities. When I started, I was just helping, like a helper student, employed by the university, and then I've been in charge of at different levels. And I've observed the evolution of students with disabilities after these 35 years. That's bad. So in our university, so what I want to tell you, it's a bit as a story, the experience we have. A couple of facts that are interesting. First, that we have now 40,000 students with disabilities in the country, which looks big if you look at the progression. So since 10 years, it's every year 15% more, so this is not bad. On the other side, there is still a place for improvement because it's only 1.5% of students. while there are probably more than 1.5% of people with disabilities in our society. But now, since 2005, all students, all people who have the baccalaureate in France, so with the same condition, can go to university. So if somebody has baccalaureate with or without disabilities, they can go to university. What we observe, and this is the first lesson we get from this French experience, is that we started to get a lot of students with disability coming when we started to create support centers in every university. Seriously, before, I was talking with the president of a university in 94, 95, and he was telling me, why there's no students are coming, so why do you want a budget? Why do you want money? Because well, if some students come, you tell me and I will give you the necessary money, don't worry. And actually, nothing was happening. And then a few years later, when we created a support center in this university, all of a sudden, why? Well, many students started to come. So this is something extremely important. So they feel that they can get some support. Another thing that I observed in these 35 years is that the typology or the kind of disabilities have changed a lot. In 88, we had 100% of students with visible disability. In my university, where I was working at this time, it was a small provincial university with about 5,000 students, and we have about 15 students with disabilities. Some were blind and some were motor impaired, and that was about it. 100%. So now, on these 40,000, the visible disabilities are around a third. And which means that 70% are students with some invisible disabilities. It can be dyslexia, it can be some psychic problems, it can be some sickness that creates disability, etc., etc. So in this year, we have been really working hard on this, and as I said, the progression is interesting. But there are still many problems, and the biggest problem that remains now, because the institution, I was really touched by what said Haben this morning about the fact that when she was in front of several institutions, and they did not want, they will find plenty of things to say, no, we don't want actually. But yeah, well, now the institutions want, but who don't want in our country, it's the teachers. So it's not all the teachers, it's not only me, plenty of teachers, but all students with disability, when we talk to them, they say that they have at least one or several teachers that really don't want them in the classroom. Well, they don't send them away because they cannot, but their attitude makes that it's like I say, yeah. So this is something. So you said it. It's off. So well, I can finish then, and see if we have questions, we can. Yeah. So
you can just summarize, sure.
Well, I think it's okay. Well, let's keep some time for questions.
Okay, actually it's 30 minutes. He insisted that we have to keep it 30 minutes. I'm sure this is a provocative topic by the virtue that we are going against the grain. And sometimes when you go against the culture, because we are trying to engage in the transformation of individuals and reformation of institutions, that can be so challenging sometimes. But for the sake of time, I see.
Well, perhaps we can have the questions during the interactive session, which will be in the tail end of the program, so that we can move to the next panel discussion, kindly.
For the sake of time, yes, we will have to vacate the space for others, but we do appreciate, and if you have time, you interact with us, ask us those questions, push us. Thank you, the panelists, for volunteering.